Alright, hello and welcome to They Were Heroes, Session 0. We have Kevin here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing alright.
And why don't you go ahead and tell us who you're bringing to the table here with us today?
I am bringing Deveri the Arachnea. Did I say that right?
Arachnia, yeah.
Arachnea. The Arachnean Rogue.
So, our very first beastkin. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Deveri?
Like appearance stuff?
More about him as his character.
He's a little jaded and sarcastic. He occasionally likes to manipulate people for fun. Not too often, though. He's had a very interesting job, but yeah.
So, you mentioned that he's been jaded. What kind of
Yeah.
things went in his life that led him to such a path?
Well, first off, it was his parents. You know, like all jaded people, I suppose. It started there. One parent wanted his dad wanted a son, and his mom wanted a girl, and it wound up being kind of somewhere. He's a boy. Let me make that very clear. But you wouldn't be able to tell that from first glance, really. And then when he got older, it just kept getting worse and worse, and then eventually he found himself in the oldest profession in the world, we'll say.
Alrighty then. How did he find himself into that line of work?
It was actually to help out his oldest childhood friend. She had her parents had recently died, and she wasn't really able to make enough money to support herself. And Deveri was like, "Okay, I need to protect her and help her out. So how am I going to make money?" And he was walking around town one day, and he just so happened to see someone already in that line of work, and a light went off in his head, and he said, "Hey, that could work."
So he kind of stumbled in being to a whore.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what exactly did your parents or this friend think about this sudden radical change in direction in your life?
His friend was kind of skeptical about it when she found out. Wasn't really all too pleased with it, but he was too headstrong, couldn't be talked down. The mother had died of an illness a couple years beforehand, and the father, by this point, was so far down in the bottle that half the time he didn't know what day it was.
So has your communication with your family kept up, or have you lost track of your father?
He's not that hard to find if you want to go find him. You can usually find him at a tavern, sitting on a bar stool. In terms of contact, there hasn't really been a conversation between the two that lasted more than 3 words in over a year.
Is that intentional on your end, or is that just circumstance with him?
A little bit of both. Deveri just got tired of it. Uh, Came to the realization that, you know what, I'm never going to make this man happy, so why continue trying? Uh, so he just kind of gave up.
So you were mentioning this friend multiple times already. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about her?
She, her name is Silesia. Uh, she lived, she's a human who actually lived not too far from where Deveri did. They met as children and quickly struck up a friendship. And being one of the first people to ever show Deveri any kindness, he kind of took on uh, the mentality of, I need to protect this person and help them out. Uh, kind of like an older brother might, you know?
So, brother sister mentality.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've been keeping up with her.
Oh yeah. Even when he was still living in Newport, they still lived pretty close. As children, he would occasionally stay over at at her place. When when his mother got sick, he stayed there for a little bit, and just whenever he needed a place to go that wasn't home, he could stay over there if he helped out around the house. After her parents died, he stayed there for a few days, and they still keep in pretty regular contact.
Was the passing of your mother something that was hard for you to get over? Or is this something you never really admitted to getting over?
It was a little odd for him. Like I said, his mother wanted a daughter, his father wanted a son, so they both, when he was born and he got a little older and it kept, it was obvious he wasn't really what either of them wanted, they both kind of drew back. So when his mother passed, he still loved her, like a son would love his mother, but they weren't, it didn't hit him quite as hard as it might have would others because of that. It still hit him, and it was like, it made him realize, all of that time that was wasted, but again, not quite as hard as it would have others. Would have hit some other people.
So, digressing from your mother, your father, and Silesia, what did Deveri do to get to the point that he's in right now? Because I'm assuming he's still no longer an attendant.
Not full time. No, he did eventually grow to like it. So he'll, on occasion, if he needs some extra gold or if he's really bored, he'll, continue to attend to people, I suppose you could say. But no, when he was on the job one day, this noblewoman came to where he happened to be working and hired him, and she became a regular customer. And over the next few years, they got closer and closer. And eventually, he realized that, he loved this woman, but he had been what he was so long, and, she's relatively high on the social ladder, so he felt he needed to kind of climb up to that, and to do that he needed to, at the very least, amass some funds. So, excuse me, he set out and became an adventurer.
So, in other words, you set out to find worth in yourself to prove to this noble. Does she have a name?
Sorry. Elise was her name.
And you mentioned she was a noble. Of what kind?
She had actually been married off to a merchant, you know, sells some luxury goods. The man she married kind of dabbled in all kinds of. He was more of a wide range merchant, sold a little bit of everything. Had a couple different, other merchants working under him.
Would he have been a merchant prince, or was he just a influential merchant lord?
Just a very influential merchant lord.
Was he aware of her outings with you?
Oh yeah. Even as well as she tried to keep it hidden, and Deveri never spoke of it. It did eventually get back to him. Hey, your wife is going down over to where the Beastkin are at, and she's sleeping around on you. And he was not very happy about that. It wasn't that he loved her or anything. It was more like, she's mine. You can't have her.
Was there any type of encounter from this?
He did go to where Deveri worked, and or where he could usually be found, and tried to threaten him, but when that didn't work, he seemed to back off. It didn't exactly stay that way though, because Elise kept going to see him, and it kept making him more and more angry. And eventually, he decided, well, I'll just instead, since Elise keeps running around with someone else, let me just go and take someone that's precious to this man. So he went and found out where Silesia was working at the time, and approached her all, jovial like, and offered her a job at his house, cleaning. He wasn't exactly known for treating his maids well, I suppose you could say, but the thing about Silesia was she didn't pay attention to gossip. It was mostly just she was kind of naive, I suppose you could say, so she accepted. And
How did Deveri take this news?
he was ready to storm the gates. He was not happy, but Elise managed to talk him down. So instead, he went to the final character that I actually named in his backstory, the man who had actually trained him in his the ways of stealth and all of that, for advice. And Rorik was his name, and he helped brew a slow-acting poison that you put in like some food or some drink, and it kills them several hours later, making it appear as if it was a more natural form of death than anything.
There seems to be a but in the story.
Well, it did kind of go off without a hitch. He had to. The problem was he had to get to the man's food or drink, because you know, if you do it before it gets to the house, it runs a risk of hitting, you know, anybody who might drink it. A servant who's, you know, decided, oh, I'm going to drink this one bottle and no one's ever going to notice, winds up dead a few hours later. Or if you poison some food, it could have been Elise who ate it. Or so he had to kind of bide his time for a couple days, and finally the guy was having a kind of a get together of a bunch of different merchants, you know, just to talk shop and, you know, show off his extravagant items and whatnot. And each person invited, I guess I should say, was allowed to bring a single guest. So Elise brought Deveri, but the man knew what Deveri looked like, so he had to disguise himself. He did manage it, and then the man died in his sleep later that night. It was a very close thing, though, because that stuff was watched like hawks by the cook.
So this seems like this is a end of a love story. He's gone. She's now the lord of an influential trade. Rorik was never associated with the murder of a lord. And Cilicia now works under Elise.
Right. Obviously they couldn't just, you know, right away have him move in and all of that. It would have definitely raised some eyebrows, especially even if you take away his profession, just what he is, you know, his race alone would have raised some eyebrows, and would have brought up a whole investigation on it and all of this. So, and at the time it was more like there were the beginnings of feelings, but not complete. It did eventually get to that point, though, and that's when he decided he needed to head out on his own.
So he left on not just trying to be a better match for Elise, but in order to really correct himself. Correct? You're muted.
Oh, I'm muted again. Sorry. Yeah. There are, of course, some things he will not give up. He enjoys them too much. He enjoys the thrill of both his profession and the actual little bit of sneaking around, the occasional little pickpocket, that kind of deal.
So, the thing that's going to really change all this, how was he able to leave his tent master or bed or pillow changer without causing issues, since it seems like you left on your own volition? AKA your pimp.
He was more, how do I explain it? I guess self-employed. He did occasionally work with others, but he never wanted someone to have quite that much power over him, which of course made his job that much harder because, you know, he was on his own.
So then how was he being so successful without being handicapped or kneecapped during the week?
Well,
by these other people that you would be encroaching land on.
He had by this point, this came when he started in this profession when he was around 15 or, well, no, maybe a little later. Probably closer to, I don't know what the age is in this world, but
It's in your race. But not on there. It's somewhere else. But continue on.
Okay, anyway, a little closer to the adult age. By that point, Rorik had already kind of taken him under his wing and said, okay, here's the basics. The rest you gotta learn yourself. So he taught him the basics of how to pickpocket and stuff, and then he taught him a little bit of combat, just enough to protect himself, but it's not like he never was shoved out of anywhere. A couple times, some of the other owners did send people after him, and he was forced to relocate from time to time. He has a very small scar, actually, on the outside upper part of his right leg, where one got in where someone actually took a shot but missed and it grazed him.
So, in terms of pillow changers, you definitely have your enemies and those looking out for you.
Oh yeah. Rorik would occasionally, if he needed protection from time to time, would kind of come along and just blend in with the crowd or hide in an alleyway and keep an eye on him. And obviously Elise would do what she could, but she's busy with other stuff.
She's a noble of a merchant, which, unfortunately, the life you've taken is a very different turn from hers.
Oh, yeah. And she made that thought very well known.
How often, or how open do you make who is important to you public? Does everybody know that that's that boy that helps that Silesia girl?
Yeah, it wasn't anything that he ever hid. He just, didn't talk about it. It just kind of became obvious. They were always seen together as children, and then oftentimes as adults you could find, if you found one, the other probably wasn't too far away. So people knew. Oh, hey, there's Silesia. Where is he? Oh, there's Deveri way over there.
So, Silesia is still working with Elise at this point after you left.
Yeah, she's working as a maid over at Elise's house.
So with you setting off, having left the bridges burnt that needed to be burnt, what are some things that you got into? Did you ever get mugged?
A couple people tried. Deveri learned pretty early on, make yourself appear poor, people are probably less likely to attempt. And if you make yourself appear weak and fragile, people will vastly underestimate.
So how many times exactly have you been shot?
Shots that connected, only 2. Only one of them really left any real kind of scar. The other was, it was more, I guess you could call it a powder burn than anything. It healed up in almost no time. Grand time shot, probably about 5 times he's been shot at.
Now, compared to everybody else that's been in the They.Were.Heroes cast, who have been some form of human, you have a very interesting lifestyle in the fact that you're a beastkin. You are the minority in the desert sea. What are some of the hardships you had to deal with because of it?
Well, it comes with the usual, that race is a minority. It's, people didn't shop. Some shops would occasionally raise prices on things when he went to buy them. People, making fun of him, taunting him, the usual stuff, I suppose.
Did he ever react to any of these instead of keeping it in? These taunts, these challenges?
Once or twice he did. When he was young, he did. He actually got into a fight, a fist fight with a slightly older kid who just wouldn't let off. Another time, he kind of shot back some insults, insulted the guy's manhood, that kind of thing.
So, another question is, besides the one noble, who is, or how many people is Deveri to blame in the terms of their deaths?
When it comes to deaths, probably only about 3 or 4 so far. Including the noble.
What were those situations?
After he killed the noble, he would occasionally. He took 1 or 2 different. I guess you could call them assassination contracts. That Rorik couldn't handle because he had other business. So it kind of, his profession kind of helped in that. He would lure them in, and then, like a spider, kill the mate. And then he did that twice, but that was kind of it as far as that went. And then the last time, it was, the last one was actually, again, to protect Silesia, his childhood friend.
What was the circumstance for this?
He had been walking home and happened to notice that her door, or something was amiss at her house, and he could hear shuffling and scuffling around inside. When he went in, there was a man there moving toward her. Well, so he protected her like he always does, and a guy wound up dead.
How did she take this?
She was scared, confused.
And this is being the first time she's actually seen you take a life, officially.
Yeah. It took her a while. She kind of avoided him for a few days. She did eventually come around, but there was always a little bit of that look in her eye, like he kind of scared her a bit after that.
Alright. Was this earlier on, before everything led to the decision of you killing the noble, or was this after the fact? After you've taken your first life and became slowly more callous to the idea of taking lives?
This one was a little after that noble, but not too far. probably a little less than a year after he had killed the noble.
Also, does Silesia know that you killed that noble?
No, he never told her, and Elise has kept quiet about it as well.
What about the other killings?
No, he made a decision to keep as much of that hidden as possible. He didn't really tell her, where he was going, who he was meeting, when he had a job, any of that. It was always just he would show back up at some point, uh, you know, tired, but appearing to have just had another day.
So she's very much so living in the dark in a lot of the things that she's done.
Oh yeah.
Do you feel guilty for that?
In the beginning there was some, but after she saw him take that first life, it it kind of helped him, and the way she reacted to it, it kind of helped him to justify keeping it from her. This was the first person who had ever been kind to him, his oldest childhood friend. And if one killing to save her could cause her to react like that, what would she think about him killing people for a little bit of, money?
So this would be one of the biggest hang-ups in your two's relationship.
Yeah. It she always kind of sensed he wasn't telling her everything, but she never pushed, thinking, oh, it's to do with his job, I'm not gonna pry. She never guessed anywhere near what it was.
So in terms of people knowing these things, what about Elise? Is she aware of the 4 people you've killed?
She is. He couldn't talk to Rorik about it because he's an old man, and his look on it is, it's a paycheck. Deal with it. Elise was more sympathetic, I guess you could say. Again, she's not pleased with it, but she isn't gonna hold it against him either. So he would tell her, but spare her all of the gory details. It would just be, hey, I had to do this. Just let me rest here a while. And she would occasionally. It only happened one of the times, but she kind of hid him for a couple days. Gave him, I guess you could call it, sanctuary.
Alright, so we have quite a bit of information on good old Deveri the Smile. Next, we're going to go into another part of They.Were.Heroes Session 0 Generation, which we create 4 legends that are associated with good old Deveri. So, let me get that started. What is the first legend?
I suppose the first one would be that he's an incubus or a succubus, depending on who you ask, and the time of day or whatever. The story changes from one to the other on occasion. Another one, and he's never quite figured out how this one got started. One of the things is that he eats babies. Let's see, that's 2. One is that the third one is that he can disappear from your sight. Like you can be looking right at him, blink, and he's just gone. Kind of fusing with the shadows, I guess you could say. And the last one, hmm. I had 4 a couple days ago, and I can't remember what the last one was. Okay, we've got that one, that one, and that one. He, crap. The last one is, has more to do with the, the version, the race of beastkin that he is. It's that he, Spider, it's that if you go into his house, it's more like the inside is just nothing but spider webs everywhere, even though it makes absolutely no sense. It so he's the last one is he's actually a spider riding around in a humanoid meat suit.
Alrighty. So, have you guys heard about that fella? Well, there's plenty of fellas. What you talking about? You know the one. They call him the Smile. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I heard that it's some kind of a demon sent from the underground to pull healthy and happy relationships apart and eat their souls right underneath them sheets, I say. Souls. The way I heard it. He breaks into people's house that has newborns, takes their children, and eats them just so he can stay beautiful. Really? Well, I heard that he's one of them survivors from a time past before the one saved us all. Lived in the shadows. Creatures of the dark he is. You guys are so fanciful. The truth is, he's a spider. He has a spider's lair. He lives in web. And he's just pretending to be a beastkin human. All he is just a giant spider. And I bet you keep your women and kids away from him. Especially he starts passing by. And that would be the legends of Deveri. So, last part here, as always, is us going over the questions to make sure we've answered everything that we could have answered before exiting this session 0. So, first of all, what is your family like, which we have answered, which is?
Mm-hmm. They kind of suck. And the mom's dead.
Next would be your social class, which we kind of answered.
Extremely far down. I don't know how much further down you could go, to be honest. Because beastkin are pretty low, and then being an attendant takes you kind of lower than that.
So next would be why you became an adventurer, which we kind of answered.
Hmm. He wants to kind of get himself, I guess, try to raise his station a bit, or just get filthy rich and make people think he's changed his station.
Next would be how religious you are, which we have not touched on.
Not at all, unless the price is right.
What was the reason why he became like this? In a world where your gods have physical feats that can happen in front of your face, how is it that he became one to absconder that view of such blatant proof?
To him, it was more always, if they are up there, they're not paying a bit of attention, they don't care, so why should I care whether or not they exist? He always just kind of wrote it off as, fanciful magic tricks made by, zealot people who wanted to prove that their gods existed.
And does that also go double for the existence of Raven in his life?
Yeah, that was always more of a story to him than anything. That the one of the few happy memories he had of his parents. It was they always, they tried to tell him a little bit. It just never stuck. He thought it was an interesting story, but other than that,
All right. So, next would be who are your best friends and worst enemies?
best friends would probably be Silesia, Elise, and Rorik. Worst enemy would probably be Rorik's previous pupil. Never took one look at Deveri and said, I don't like you. And it quickly sparked a kind of a long-lasting feud. They do not like each other in the least.
Is there a reason why you guys don't like each other?
Well, with Dever, it's just because every time he turned around, Rorik's other pupil was, tripping him up, belittling him, that kind of thing. On the other one's side, it was kind of, he was Deveri's a beastkin. He didn't like that, and Deveri was a little cocky. Thought he was the best for a while. Yeah.
Now, when was this pupil a factor in your life? Was he always there from the beginning, or is this someone that came in after the fact?
No, he kind of showed up, and he didn't stay in Newport. He kind of traveled around a lot and would occasionally come back to Newport for advice, or as he once put it, to make sure the old man hasn't kicked the bucket yet. And it was on one of those that he met Deveri, and the two kind of made an instant rivalry. He has shown up a few different times, but he has not really been a continuous presence, more of a intermittent one.
All right. So next would be, what are your prized possessions?
He's actually got a couple different ones. His most prized ones are a small necklace hanging around his neck that Elise gave to him right before he left. And the last one is his last most favored possession is a dagger that actually belonged to Rorik that he gave him probably a month or so after he killed the noble, kind of as a rite of passage.
Alright, so with those prized possessions in hand, who are you loyal to?
Mostly just, the people I've mentioned. Himself, Silesia, Rorik, and Elise. Those are the people he's known the longest. They've earned his trust. So they're the ones he's most loyal to. Everyone else, in his mind, is kind of out for themselves.
And then finally, who is it that you love versus who is it that you hate with all your being?
With love, it's, probably the most important one is Elise, obviously. When it comes to hate, he kind of... Specific people is a little harder for him to hate, just because of, what he's been doing. Humans as a whole, he doesn't really like. He can learn to like specific ones more than the rest, as evidenced by the 3 he's gotten to know. But yeah, humanity as a whole he doesn't really like. Kind of hates them in general.
With good reason.
Yeah.
So, with that, I think we have everything that we need to know for now about good old Deveri the Smile. Anything that you want to add before we leave out?
No. That's about it.
Alright, so, thank you guys for watching They Were Heroes. Another Session 0 for Deveri the Smile. And thank you, Kevin, for coming out.
Alright, thank you.
Remember, you can follow me at Nightxgamer at YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon to be a part of everything that we're doing here. We do these games because we have fun with it, but at the same time, we like doing it to make a show for everyone to see. Any type of involvement you make, even if it's as simple as pressing a like on the video or leaving a comment, it's tremendously appreciated, and we love that you're here. They Were Heroes is a D&D 5e Western that will be played on Saturday nights at 10:35 p.m. CST, and is weekly, so you can always catch us at that time. If not, we may be a couple of minutes late or whatnot, but you can expect us unless stated otherwise on Twitter or Facebook. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and head out of here and hopefully have another Session 0 for our last player to replace the 2 that we missed. So, again, thank you for coming out, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.